What's going on, everybody? It's Charles. In this video, we are going to be installing a MILLTEK exhaust on the MK8 Golf R. Before I even got the car, I picked up this exhaust from MILLTEK, and I also ordered both the resonated and the non-resonated pipes. I wanted to do some testing to see what the resonated and the non-resonated pipes sounded like and see if we have any drone or anything like that, especially on the highway. So in this video, I'm going to show you step by step on how to install one of these, including transferring over the motors for the exhaust flaps, and we're going to do some sound testing on both the resonated and non-resonated pipes as well. And big thanks to WD-40 brand for partnering with us on this video. Because we're going to be reusing our exhaust hangers, I'm going to use WD-40 brand Specialist silicone spray to help make those hangers go on and come off a little bit easier. Now, our MK8 is a brand new car with about 1,000 miles on it, but if you're dealing with something with rust on it, you may also want to use some rust penetrant to help loosen up those fasteners. If it's really bad, pre-soak it a couple of days early, and that'll help even more. But before we install the exhaust, we need to head to the dyno so we can establish a horsepower baseline. Then we'll bring it back after the exhaust and see if we gained any power. Now, this is an all-wheel drive car, but we only have a two-wheel drive dyno. It would be awesome if we could do all-wheel drive, but on an all-wheel drive dyno, the rollers have to be connected, and unfortunately, there's nobody local that has a setup like that. So our man Ian's coming through big time, as always, and hopefully we don't puke a 2-liter turbo all over his dyno today. Okay. All right. Here we go. I'm a little uneasy. Not gonna lie, I'm uneasy. It's my dyno pose. Okay, so we just did our first run after piddling around with the dyno mode. We finally figured it out. If we leave everything connected and just do dyno mode, which is hazards on, pedal press 5 times, when the warning lights come on, mash the key and start it up. That disables the rear wheels of our all-wheel drive system. So from the factory, the manual transmission is 315 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque. We laid down 293 horsepower and 271. Now that's to the wheels. Volkswagen's rating is to the crank. In typical fashion, we're seeing more than we would probably expect. Generally, you'd expect about a 20% loss through the drivetrain, maybe even a little bit more, but in that ballpark. So pretty happy with those numbers. We're gonna let the car cool a second, and then we're gonna run it again, just so we have 2 baselines, and then we're gonna head back and put that sweet sounding exhaust on. We'll do one more. He let off early on that one. There we go. 292, so we're all in the same ballpark.
All right, Charles, what do you think of that dyno run?
Okay, so I'm really happy about the dyno run, mostly because it's the first time we've been to see Ian without exploding a car. So super duper victory there. The big curiosity is, will we see difference between resonated and non-resonated, or is it just noises? I actually ordered this MILLTEK exhaust before I even had the car, and at the time of ordering, it was the only exhaust that was available in the US. Now, unfortunately, what that came along with is a pretty hefty price tag of a little over $2,500, and that was the most basic one that they had. Keep in mind, this is a valved exhaust, so we can still use our mode buttons and open and close the flaps to make it nice and loud or quiet, or I guess probably louder or quieter. I'm pretty confident there'll be tons of exhaust options down the road, but for right now, this MILLTEK is what's going on, and I'm super hyped because this car sounds pretty good from the factory, and I think with this MILLTEK, it's gonna be prime. First up, we're gonna take this clamp off the back here. This is right where the downpipe or the cat pipe or the gas particulate pipe ends. I got the high speed one, low power. Crack Eli in the face with that pipe. This can just hang out right here. No big deal, little water's normal. Okay, so there's a couple of things I like to always have with me whenever I do exhaust work. One is this tool right here for removing exhaust hangers. It makes dealing with those rubber guys super easy, and probably something I should have bought many years ago, but instead I struggled like a fool. The other one is some silicone spray so we can help slide those hangers on and off quite a bit easier. The back hangers on this car are pretty beefy. Spray, spray. Then, boom, that just comes right off. Who's that guy that said Bam all the time. Emeril Lagasse? Is that the guy? Whatever happened to that guy anyway? There's another hanger just in front of the subframe. Same deal. And watch as this amazing tool works its magic. Just like that. Okay, so we got 2 of our 4 hangers. Next up, before we get the ones off the back, we need to disconnect our flappy motors. They live right here in the outer exhaust pipes. Okay, so what I did in order to get this connector off, because it's kind of tough to get to, is basically I got the pick right here, pushed down, and then carefully pulled back, and it came right out. Just be really careful. You don't want to break this if you're doing a valved exhaust, because you're going to need it again. We'll also take off our wire loom off our bracket from our other exhaust hanger, so we'll get that out of the way. I feel like I just got super lucky on that first one. Oh no, that one came right off too. Well, I'll be. I feel like what we just did there, that connector, is probably going to be the hardest part of this whole job. And now that I've said that, that's not at all the case. Okay, for the back hangers, I'm actually going to take the brackets down because these are pretty meaty boys here, and I think it's going to be easier to mess around with on the ground. So we'll take one out. It's just a 13mm bolt. This is when, if you had a friend, it'd be a good time to get one. Or a camera Eli. If you don't have something like a jack, or you're not doing it super low on the ground, grab a friend to help you, because that will be helpful. Or Eli. He'll come to your house and do it, help you. No matter where you live in the whole world, he'll come visit you. Yeah. Oh, wait, watch the drive shaft. Right down. Yeah. Okay, let's weigh this OEM exhaust. Doesn't feel very heavy, really. It's kind of awkward. Maybe it's time to stop using a bathroom scale. So basically 40 pounds. What's interesting is our non-resonated pipe weighs about 55 pounds, and our resonated pipe weighs right at 61 pounds. So we're gaining, what, 15 to 20 pounds on our aftermarket muffler exhaust system, which is kind of rare. Usually you end up saving weight. Maybe Volkswagen did weight reduction, bro. Label those. Okay, now we got to deal with these meaty boy hangers here. This one I feel like I'm gonna struggle with. Oh, there we go. There we go. Oh, just need a little lube action. Okay, so in looking at our new MILLTEK exhaust, what we're probably going to actually have to do is take these hangers and turn them the other way, because the hanger looks a bit wider on the other one. So I labeled it just to make sure we have them left and right. We'll see what happens when we put that other one on, that other exhaust. I mean, now, let's see if now that we got the process down, see if this one goes easier. Lubey, lubey, and lubey, lubey. Here's how I did it. So kind of pry that away, slip the tool in, there we go, like that, then you can push it off. I think 100% chance it would have been more struggles with that up in the car. So we got these off. Now what we have to do is we have to swap our flappy motors over to our new exhaust. If you don't have a valved exhaust, you don't have to worry about it. But so it comes with a spring, this guy right here. It also had another spring in the, let's line them up, in the box. This one looks taller. So I'm not sure. Unfortunately, like most things, they don't really give you good instructions. So we're just gonna see what happens. You need an 8mm socket, and take these 3 nuts off. Now there is some spring tension behind this. Reveal. Okay, here's our factory guy. See, the spring clips into the motor here, and then there's this channel down in the flap that it has to line up with. Yeah, all right. Once that's in there, it is pretty wild to me that this is just like open like this. So once you get that in there, you probably want to double check. I don't know if you can see that down in the well here. that you have the spring clipped into both the motor and into the flap on the exhaust. So double check that, make sure you're hooked in. Odds are when you activate it, it'll probably like clip itself in, but you don't have to pull this all back down in order to fix it. No bueno. Okay, another motor on. Nothing to do but to do the next step. Should we go resonated or non-resonated first? Non-resonated. Eli says non-resonated. Let's do that. We have 3 different size clamps for this exhaust. What's cool is they're actually labeled right on the clamp. They're 66.5 millimeter, 68 millimeter, and I think the other one is 83. Our first pipe is going to be our coupler here. Make sure you put your clamp on first, a mistake I've made a million times. Also, not a bad idea, especially if you're in a real rust-prone, salt-belty kind of area. Throw some anti-seize on there. I like the copper stuff for exhaust. We'll get that on. Then we will fitment our pipe on. I'll kind of line it up where the factory one was. Now, I'm not going to do anything else for now. We're going to wait till we get everything else hooked up, and then we'll kind of work from the back to the front or front to the back and really massage the exhaust into its proper home. So let's see which one makes more sense. Oh, up and over. What about my other clamp, Eli? I forgot it. This is a do as I say, not as I do proposition here. So, all right, there we go. More better. For our hangers in the back, the factory ones lived this way. We need the MILLTEK one to live this way. So just flip it. Nice and easy. Lube this guy up. There we go. Boom. Wait, no, that's not what he said. Bam.
Bam.
Like Salt Bae and Emerald Lagasse had a baby, would say boom. Eli said no. How is it weird hour at like noon or whatever the heck time it is? Wait a minute, let's make sure Eli doesn't yell at us again. And get our clamp. Thanks. Good looking out, bro. Perfect. And thank you. We have some like twisting we can do to kind of get it. But yeah, we need to just loosely bolt that up now. Clampy. Clampy. There we go. We'll just do it like that. There we go. So this next part is the part you either love or you hate, depending on how bad your OCD is. Fiddling with it, getting it lined up is usually the most challenging part of doing an exhaust. A little better. We can also like move the pipes in and out and all that. So what I just wanted to do was I wanted to get it so we could put the tips on. We're of course going to have to do some adjustication here. So this is not its final resting place, but I am just having a problem today. Oh, I'll draft it again. Kind of want to also look up in there so you don't end up like having the pipe stick out past here because that looks janky. Bunch more, I guess. There we go, that's better. Now, when it comes to adjusting your exhaust, really, this kind of depends on how OCD you are about its alignment. You can spend a little bit of time or you can spend a ton of time. It's really up to you. I'm gonna just get it as close as I can because we're still gonna swap pipes, so we'll have to do some more adjustment after that. But now that we have it pretty close anyway, let's plug our motors in. So there we go. I think it looks really, really cool. I'm very excited. Now we gotta get the car down, see what it sounds like. All right, I'm gonna start it. A bit louder. It's not that much different.
It's not.
I mean, it's a bit louder.
You can hear.
Yeah.
It's a little louder.
The butt dyno says nothing, but I'm not surprised by that.
Did you say butt dyno?
Yeah. You don't know what a butt dyno is?
No.
That's like the horsepower you feel with your butt. Sometimes sound all right. Let's That was pretty loud pop.
Whoa, there you go.
That was a pretty loud pop. Not ultra pops and super bangs. Okay, so we've let the car cool off a little bit. Eli got some lunch. Now it is time to install our resonated pipe. A resonated pipe, which is gonna be super easy, barely an inconvenience, because all we have to do is take off 1, 2, 3 clamps, and then take our non-resonated out and put this guy in. And after listening to it without the resonated pipe, my gut says non-resonated is gonna be the way to go. Let's also get our hangers off. Ow. All right. Whew. So now, meow. If you're installing just one or the other of these pipes, the installation is pretty much the same. The big trick is make sure you put your clamps on. Now that it's in there, we're up front bolted. I'm just gonna move this, slide our clamp on. Actually, let me show you how I'm doing this. Eli, come around this side. So obviously you can't really hit this with a hammer and move it side to side. So what I did was I snugged the clamp down away from where it needs to be. And then what that does is that gives me something to hit on to move the clamp. I think the difference between this and factory is gonna be minimal, like real minimal. Let's see what it sounds like. Okay, so we got our resonated pipe on and we're driving, obviously. Thanks for the update, Big Ben. I think it's quieter than the stock one. So I'm not sure if I mentioned though, on the website, MILLTEK claims a 8 to 10% gain in horsepower. So we're talking, what is that? 20 to 30 horsepower, roughly. I don't feel that in the car. The butt dyno does not indicate that. We're gonna go back to the dyno and see, so we can have actual dyno instead of the butt dyno. So we've swapped all the pipes, we've made all the noises, now it's time to head back to the dyno so that we can measure how much horsepower our exhaust gets. What we're gonna do is we're gonna dyno it as is right now, which is with the resonated pipe. Then we're gonna swap exhaust pipes and do it with the non-resonated and leave with the non-resonated so we can see if we get drone on the highway on the ride home. 1/2 of the horsepowers. Woo! So we lost 0.3 pound-feet of torque and we gained about 1/2 a horsepower, essentially negligible. Now let's swap pipes and run it again. All right, where are we at? Okay, here we go. Resonated pipe on, dialed in, restrapped. I made sure we got restrapped down on the dyno. Game time. We lost power. Literally identical, well within like the difference in dyno, perfectly identical. So that's good, we're consistent. Our dyno numbers prove that basically the catback exhaust gained us 0 horsepower and 0 torque. Those minor differences in numbers are essentially irrelevant. There's one final test that we need to do, and that's drone on the highway. So on the ride here, we were really paying close attention to how the car sounded, and it sounded fine. It sounded just like it did from the factory. And now that we have our non-resonated pipe on, we can do that same comparison that we did on the drive here for drone at highway speeds, and that, my friends, will be our final test. Also, while we're here, we got to pick up a block for a 1.8 turbo because my TT block wasn't any good. Well, after about a 2-hour trip back from the dyno, we are settled in back at the shop. That whole trip, we were evaluating the exhaust for drone on the highway. And what I will tell you is there is a tiny bit, just a little bit of drone. It's not bad, it's not a deal breaker, but I'd be lying to you if I said that there was absolutely no drone at all. There was a difference between the resonated and the non-resonated pipe. Now let's break down a couple of facts about this exhaust. The exhaust as I have it on the car right now will run you a little over 20 $2,300, and that's non-resonated with the polished tips. If you add the resonator, that adds a little bit, so you're just over $2,500. You can actually spec this exhaust all the way up to over $3,100 if you get these beautiful burnt titanium tips, and they have a couple of other tips that really do look well too. I liked the black ones a lot, but I didn't think they stood out enough with the black undercladding on the back bumper. Now you might be thinking, Charles, $2,500 for an exhaust? Oof, that's a ton of money. I didn't even pay that much for this Audi, whole car and everything sitting right next to me here, especially for a 304 stainless steel exhaust. And I agree with you, it is a ton of money. Keep in mind that if you're doing comparisons, compare apples to apples. This is a valved exhaust, so you still retain the flaps just like the factory exhaust had, and that probably adds the majority of the individual cost for the whole system. Now the pros are, the exhaust looks incredible, the tips are beautiful, a big improvement over the aesthetics of the factory one, and it does add, especially without the resonated pipe, a really good exhaust note. Now that does come with some drawbacks, one being the price point is pretty high in my opinion. Two, you're adding 15 to 20 pounds of overall weight to the car, which is not a ton, but it's definitely worth noting. And three, you're not getting any horsepower. We saw exactly no gains in power, and even if it was possibly 1 or 2 horsepower, that's also really within the variation of the dyno itself and the car and the conditions. So I would call this a net zero gain in horsepower. Now, MILLTEK does say you can expect to see 8 to 10% of horsepower improvement with their exhaust. However, what they don't clarify is which exhaust piece would you most likely see that horsepower gain. Is that turbo back? Is it on a naturally aspirated car? Is it just a downpipe? Is it just a catback? Typically, you're not going to see huge horsepower gains on just a catback exhaust on a modern car. The big takeaway for me here on this one is VW did a really good job with the exhaust on this car from the factory, especially because it's non-resonated. Is it worth $2,600, $2,500 by the time you get it to your door? That's really gonna be up to you. There are a couple of negatives that really would make me consider possibly waiting for other exhaust options. And something else I actually did notice too is now when the flaps actuate to like do their self-testing, it's pretty loud. You can hear it inside the car, which is something I never noticed on the factory exhaust. I think it's just because that motor area is a little more open. So overall, I think it's a cool looking exhaust. It's gonna really, again, be up to you whether you find it worth the money for that or not. I can't make that decision for you, only you can. But what I will leave you with is some direct comparisons between the factory exhaust, the non-resonated exhaust, and the resonated exhaust, so you can hear them all kind of in a row. With that, I'm out. Don't forget to stick around for those exhaust notes. Have an awesome day, and I'll talk to you again next time.